This lesson is about writing the equation of a circle. The standard form of a circle is the quantity x minus h squared plus the quantity y minus k squared equals r squared, where h and k is an ordered pair that represents the center of the circle, and r is the radius of the circle. And the radius of a circle runs, if you want to see a picture, the radius of the circle runs from the center of the circle, goes from the center to a point on the circle, basically halfway across. This would be your radius. So basically, if you're trying to write the equation of a circle, you got to know two things. You got to know the center and you have to know the radius. The questions are typically presented in three different formats. The first format's pretty straightforward because you're given the center and the radius. It says write the equation of a circle in standard form given the center is 3, -4, and the radius is 5. So the center, remember, is your h is the first number in the ordered pair, and k is the second number in the ordered pair, and it gives you a radius of 5. So we're basically going to substitute those values that were given to us into the standard form of the equation. I call it plugging and chugging. Okay, so if we substitute those numbers in to the formula, we have x minus 3 squared plus y minus -4 squared equals 5 squared. And then we want to go back and try to simplify as much of that as we can. So we have x minus 3 squared plus y plus 4, minus and a minus makes a plus, squared equals 25. And that is the equation of the circle in standard form that has a center at 3, -4, and a radius of 5. Another way that they're sometimes worded is it will say write the equation of the circle in standard form given the center is at -1, 7, and it passes through the point 2, 5. So in this scenario, we're given the center, but I do not know the radius. And so let's think about what this would look like. Let's think about the picture we would have here if we were going to draw this circle. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, so our center is at -1, 7. Okay, so here's our center. Usually label it C. And then we know that it passes through the point 2, 5. So our circle is going to go somehow like this. Kind of a weird shaped circle, I know. Okay, and so we need to know the radius. Well, the radius runs from the center to a point on the circle. So I need to figure out the length of that line segment that runs from the center to that point on the circle. So to do that, I'm going to have to calculate or determine the distance from the center point, which is -1, 7, and the point 2, 5. Okay, so remember your distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. Okay, so I'm going to plug and chug. D, or the distance, equals the square root of 2 minus a minus 1 squared added to 5 minus 7 squared. So I have the square root of 3 squared plus negative 2 squared, which equals the square root of 9 plus the square root of 4, which is the square root of 13. So the radius, what I've determined is that my radius is the square root of 13. So using the radius that I just calculated in the center that I was given, I can now write the equation of my circle, because I would have x minus negative 1 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals the square root of 13 squared. So simplifying that, I end up with x plus 1 squared plus y minus 7 squared. Remember, squaring and square root are inverses. They will cancel one another off, so it's 13. So the answer is x plus 1 squared added to y minus 7 squared equals 13. Okay, so you have an extra step there. You had to first determine the length or the distance of the radius. The third one that you sometimes get is write the equation of the circle in standard form given the endpoints of the diameter. Again, it may help us to look at what this would look like if we wanted to think about creating a picture. Okay, so we have 3, 0, and 1, negative 6. And those are the endpoints of the diameter, which means my circle is going to connect on either side. Okay, so in this case, we don't have either the center nor the radius. So we need to figure out what the center point, and I'm just going to kind of mark it, where my center would be. And then we know the radius runs from the center to the side. So I really have two things to figure out here. I need to find the center first. So to find the center, we're going to use the midpoint of that diameter because the center is in the center or the middle. So to figure the center, we're going to calculate the midpoint. Remember, the midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And the second pair is y1 plus y2 over 2. So if I plug and chug using the values that were given to me, I would have my midpoint is 3 plus 1 divided by 2, and then 0 plus negative 6 divided by 2. So that gives me 4 over 2 and negative 6 over 2, which simplifies to 2, negative 3. So this center point, and I kind of about got it where it's supposed to go, this center point is now, we know to be 2, negative 3. Then we use that center point and one of the given points, it really doesn't matter which one we use, to find the radius. To find the radius, again, we're going to calculate the distance. And I'm going to calculate the distance from the center, which is 2, negative 3, to the point 3, 0. I chose 3, 0 simply because I get to calculate with a 0, and it'll make it a little bit easier. So calculating that distance, using our distance formula, distance is the square root of 3 minus 2 squared plus 0 minus a minus 3 squared. So I have the square root of 1 squared plus 3 squared. So that's the square root of 1 plus 9, or the square root of 10. So I have the center. I've calculated the center. I've calculated the distance, or the radius. So now I'm going to substitute back into my formula. So I have x minus 2 squared plus y minus a minus 3 makes plus 3 squared equals the square root of 10, which was my radius, squared. And finally, if we simplify that, we have x minus 2 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals 10. Remember, squaring and square root are inverses of each other, so they would, in a sense, cancel one another off. So there's your final answer.